In the beginning, there was no Hollywood. No flashing bulbs, no velvet red carpets, no studio lights painting stars in silver halos. There were only kingdoms, vast empires ruled by Maharajas who sat upon gilded thrones, their power measured not just in armies or land, but in the treasures that glimmered in their courts. Among these treasures one stood apart, a diamond the color of sunlight trapped in stone. It was called the Moon of Baroda. For centuries it passed silently through royal hands, gleaming at ceremonies where oaths were sworn and wars declared. It was more than an ornament, it was a witness, starring coldly as dynasties rose in splendor and collapsed into dust. And with every passing generation, whispers clung to it like shadows. A curse, they said, a jewel too beautiful to be harmless. Those who wore it courted fortune for a moment and ruin in the years that followed. This diamond had seen palaces burn, betrayals unfold in silken chambers, and fortunes vanish as swiftly as candle flames snuffed by wind. Yet through centuries of chaos, one thing remained, the moon of Baroda itself, untouched, unchanged, its brilliance refusing to dim, as though mocking the fragility of the humans who coveted it. And then, an impossible twist in its journey. No longer locked in the treasuries of Indian kings or whispered about in hushed tones of fear, the diamond reappeared, gleaming against the throat of the most famous woman in the world. Not a queen, not an empress, but a Hollywood star whose beauty seemed destined to eclipse all others, Marilyn Monroe. Her smile lit up cinema screens. Her voice turned songs into myths. To the world she was untouchable, a goddess born of the silver screen. But diamonds, like gods, can be cruel. What secret did the moon of Baroda carry with it across oceans and centuries? And when it finally met Marilyn, did its curse tighten around her fate? If this opening made you stop scrolling, just wait until you hear how a single diamond linked Indian Maharajas, vanished dynasties, and Marilyn Monroe's untimely fate. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the story. Long before Hollywood existed, before camera shutters immortalized faces on celluloid, there was India, vast, ancient, layered with dynasties that built and broke empires. It was here, in the cradle of legends and conquests, that the moon of Baroda first emerged. Its birthplace was said to be the fabled Golconda mines, the same earth that gave rise to diamonds whose names still echo in whispers. The Koh-i-Noor, the Hope, the Regent. Each gem born of Golconda seemed touched with both glory and misfortune, as though the soil itself was rich not just with minerals, but with destiny. The moon of Baroda was unlike the icy brilliance of white diamonds. It was yellow, deep, golden, radiant, as if it had stolen a fragment of sunlight and carried it into the darkness of the mine. To hold it was to cradle something that seemed alive, pulsing with light. And that light, for rulers and kings, meant power. In a land where jewels were more than ornaments, the diamond became a symbol. It was not merely worn, it was wielded like a weapon of legitimacy. To drape such a gem around one's neck was to whisper to enemies and allies alike, "I command wealth eternal. I am favored by the gods." But as history has often shown, beauty is rarely innocent. In royal courts, diamonds were double-edged. They dazzled, yes, but they also ignited envy, lust, and betrayal. The moon of Baroda soon became part of this dangerous game, passing into the treasury of the Geekwad dynasty of Baroda, one of India's most powerful princely states. The Geekwads, ambitious and opulent, were known for their love of grandeur. Their palaces glittered with jewels, their ceremonies staged like divine theater. Yet beneath the spectacle lay rivalries, intrigues, and the eternal tension between luxury and downfall. Legends began to twist around the diamond. They said the moon of Baroda could bring glory to its bearer, but never for long. A dynasty might rise in splendor, yet the jewel seemed to outlast the kings who claimed it. Was it cursed, or was it simply the silent observer of human ambition's inevitable collapse? When emperors waged wars, when brothers betrayed each other for thrones, when fortunes vanished into debt and exile, the diamond endured, untarnished, as if amused by the fragility of its possessors. Consider the irony. Palaces crumbled, yet the jewel glowed. Voices that once commanded armies faded into silence, yet the stone sparkled with the same unchanging brilliance. To some, it was proof of the god's favor. To others, a warning that no human hand could hold such beauty without paying a price. In this era, the moon of Baroda was not just a gem, it was an omen wrapped in gold light. It told a story that kings wanted to believe was about eternal power, but perhaps it was always a story about impermanence. The diamond was the constant, humanity was the fleeting chapter. And so it sat, through coronations and funerals, through feasts and conspiracies, gleaming in the dark like an unblinking eye. The jewel was born of empire, but it would not die with one. The question remained, if it had already witnessed centuries of triumph and ruin in India, what storms might it unleash once it crossed the seas? The Gaekwads of Baroda were no ordinary dynasty. They commanded one of India's wealthiest states, their palaces drenched in gold and their treasuries overflowing with jewels. Yet among the sapphires, rubies, and pearls, there was always one stone that seemed to carry a heavier weight, the moon of Baroda. It glittered not just as an emblem of wealth, but as a silent witness to the family's entanglement with power, betrayal, and downfall. In Baroda's royal court, the diamond became both pride and paranoia. To display it was to proclaim supremacy, a declaration that fortune itself knelt before the Gaekwads. But as the years unfolded, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. Rulers who wore it found their reigns shadowed by turmoil. Political intrigues multiplied, whispers of scandal echoed through marble halls, and betrayals surfaced like serpents slithering in the dark. Maharajas who once seemed invincible fell from grace. Fortunes dissipated. Brothers turned on one another, alliances fractured, and each tragedy deepened the legend that the moon of Baroda was cursed. Was it coincidence? Or was it that the diamond carried with it an energy too immense, too unyielding for mortal hands to command? Stories spread, some whispered in fear, others in awe, that the jewel exacted a toll from its possessors. A Maharaja's extravagant wealth dwindled into debt. A royal mistress, once draped in luxury, ended her days abandoned and forgotten. Ministers who conspired in its presence found their plots unraveling with eerie precision. The diamond became more than treasure. It was a shadow looming over the dynasty. A reminder that beauty can seduce, but also destroy. The curse, as many believed, was not a bolt of lightning or a sudden calamity. It was subtler, crueler. It worked slowly, unraveling security, corroding legacies, feeding human flaws until they tore apart the very foundations of power. Kings could not resist flaunting it, but neither could they escape its grip. Beyond the walls of Baroda, the legend of the moon traveled. Merchants carried stories along the trade routes. Foreign visitors left with whispers of its brilliance and of the tragedies that seemed to stalk its owners. Over time, the jewel became a paradox, the most desired gem, yet the most feared. And in that paradox lies a truth about human desire. For even when warned of ruin, men still reached for it. Because to wear the moon of Baroda, even for a fleeting moment, was to feel immortal. That is the seduction of power, so intoxicating that even whispers of curses could not keep ambitious hands away. But history has a cruel rhythm. Dynasties collapse, palaces crumble, and rulers fade. Yet the moon of Baroda remained untouched by dust or decay, shining as brightly as the day it was pulled from the earth. And with every fall of a Maharaja, its reputation darkened, its legend grew sharper. The curse of the Maharajas was not merely a tale of misfortune. It was a reminder that the diamond did not belong to kings. It belonged only to itself. And when the empire of Baroda waned, the jewel slipped away, vanishing into the uncertain tide of history. But if it had already ruined dynasties in India, what fate awaited those who carried it across the seas? For centuries, the moon of Baroda was bound to the soil of India, its golden fire illuminating royal courts and fueling legends of glory and ruin. But no diamond, no matter how sacred, remains forever tethered to one land. As empires shifted and the tide of colonial ambition swept across the subcontinent, treasures once locked in royal vaults began to drift outward, carried on waves of conquest, commerce, and quiet betrayal. The moon of Baroda was no exception. Its journey westward was not recorded with precision. Unlike the coronations and pageants where it once gleamed openly, its departure from India unfolded in silence, cloaked in ambiguity. Some say it was sold discreetly as the Geekwad dynasty weakened, debts mounting and political pressures tightening around the royal family. Others whisper it was stolen, spirited away under the cover of chaos by merchants eager to profit from the colonial appetite for Indian jewels. There are even darker suspicions that it was gifted to a foreign power in desperation, a trade of heritage for survival. Whatever the truth, one fact remains. The diamond left the hands of princes and entered a new world that cared less for sacred legends and more for spectacle. The 19th and early 20th centuries were marked by a voracious hunger in the West for the exotic treasures of the East. Indian diamonds, rich with history, became trophies of empire. To European and American collectors, the Moon of Baroda was not just a gem, it was a symbol of possession, proof that even the mysteries of India could be acquired, catalogued, and displayed. Yet, unlike other famous stones that vanished into locked vaults or royal regalia, this diamond lingered in a kind of limbo. It surfaced only briefly, whispered about in private auctions, a phantom that appeared and disappeared with unnerving regularity. The missing years, the long silences when no record of the gem existed, added fuel to its legend. Where was it kept? Who held it in secrecy? Was it locked in velvet darkness, passed quietly between collectors too superstitious to flaunt it? Or did it simply lie in wait, choosing its next moment with an almost sentient patience? And then, against all expectations, it reappeared not in a royal treasury or a European palace, but in the bustling world of mid-20th century America. A jeweler, bold and opportunistic, brought it back into the light. Here was a diamond with centuries of whispered curses, now dangling in the windows of Western luxury. A commodity, yes, but also a time bomb of legend. Its arrival in the United States coincided with a cultural shift. Hollywood had risen as the new empire of dreams, its stars the monarchs of fantasy. The Moon of Baroda had been worn by kings and Maharajas, but destiny, it seemed, had saved its most dramatic act for a stage unlike any other. No longer would it be confined to the opulent chambers of Baroda. It was about to glitter beneath the blinding lights of Hollywood, clasped around the neck of the most iconic woman in the world. The question was not whether it would dazzle. The question was, at what cost? Hollywood in the 1950s was a world of illusions, where light and shadow conspired to build myths that felt larger than life. In this glittering empire, one woman stood above them all, Marilyn Monroe. To millions, she wasn't simply a movie star. She was the embodiment of desire, the dream turned flesh. Men adored her, women envied her, and the world couldn't look away. Yet beneath the sparkle of her smile and the silk of her gowns, Marilyn was fragile, a soul caught between the intoxicating brilliance of fame and the crushing weight of its expectations. It was in this moment, at the pinnacle of her career, that the Moon of Baroda surfaced into public consciousness once again. A diamond forged in the depths of India, steeped in centuries of whispered curses, now graced the delicate neck of Hollywood's golden goddess. The occasion, the promotion of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, the film that immortalized Monroe as the ultimate blonde bombshell. In the movie, she sang the words that would define her legacy. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. It was irony too sharp to ignore, that the diamond chosen to crown this moment was one that carried a legend not of friendship, but of doom. Photographs from the era show Monroe glowing in yellow satin, the Moon of Baroda shimmering just below her smile. It was as if two legends, separated by centuries and continents, had collided, the jewel that had survived dynasties and the woman who seemed to embody eternity herself. Together, they created an image so dazzling it bordered on surreal. For audiences, it was perfection. For those who knew the diamond's past, it was something more unsettling, a convergence of beauty and danger, innocence and inevitability. The symbolism was impossible to miss. The Maharajas of India had flaunted the stone to assert their divine right to rule. Monroe wore it to embody Hollywood's fantasy of irresistible femininity. Yet in both cases, the gem seemed to carry a shadow. Kings who wore it found their reigns cut short. What would happen to a starlet already living on the knife's edge of fame and vulnerability? Marilyn herself seemed unaware, or perhaps uninterested in the diamond's sinister reputation. For her, it was another piece of glamour in a life built around performance. But to the public, the connection was haunting. Here was a woman adored by millions, envied for her beauty, yet struggling with loneliness and insecurity behind the cameras. To see her adorned with a jewel whispered to bring ruin was to feel the faint chill of inevitability, as though fate itself had clasped the necklace around her throat. The moon of Baroda had once belonged to kings. Now it had found its way to the Queen of Hollywood. But unlike the monarchs of old, whose tragedies unfolded behind palace walls, Monroe's unraveling would be played out on the world's stage, under the merciless gaze of cameras. And so the legend deepened. The diamond had not dimmed. It had simply waited for the brightest star in the modern world so it could cast its darkest shadow. The world saw Marilyn Monroe as invincible. She was the woman whose smile could melt hearts, whose presence could silence a room, whose beauty seemed untouchable. But diamonds, like fame, have a way of magnifying everything they touch, not only brilliance, but also fragility. And after the moon of Baroda glimmered at her throat, Monroe's life seemed to follow a darker path, one eerily reminiscent of the legends surrounding the gem itself. By the mid-1950s, Marilyn had everything the world thought anyone could want: stardom, wealth, and adoration. Yet behind the lights and lenses, she was increasingly restless, vulnerable, and haunted. Fame had elevated her to goddess-like heights, but it had also trapped her in a gilded cage. Studios dictated her image, lovers betrayed her trust, and her desperate search for genuine affection often ended in heartbreak. The moon of Baroda, with its history of bringing fleeting glory followed by misfortune, felt almost symbolic of her trajectory. After Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Monroe's star did not dim, it burned even hotter. But burning hotter also meant burning faster. Rumors of affairs with powerful men, whispers of drug dependence, and her battles with insomnia began to erode the image of flawless perfection. Just as the Maharajas who once possessed the diamond saw their reigns unravel in scandal and betrayal, Marilyn too seemed ensnared in the same cruel cycle: to have everything, and then to lose it all. Consider the irony. A diamond that had survived the fall of dynasties now glittered briefly in the spotlight of Hollywood, only to be followed by one of the most shocking tragedies in American cultural history. By 1962, Marilyn Monroe was dead, just 36 years old. Official reports declared her death an overdose, but the circumstances were clouded with mystery: empty pill bottles, unanswered phone calls, and a timeline riddled with contradictions. Was it despair? Was it conspiracy? Or was it, as some could not resist speculating, the long shadow of the moon of Baroda claiming yet another victim? Of course, skeptics dismissed the idea of a curse. They pointed to Marilyn's struggles, her childhood trauma, her failed marriages, her mental health battles as explanations enough. And yet, for those who believed in the diamond's sinister reputation, the parallels were chilling. A jewel that brought dazzling glory followed by ruin, a star who embodied perfection, yet met an early, tragic end. The stories seemed to fit too neatly, as though fate itself had written the script. Perhaps the curse of the moon of Baroda was never supernatural at all. Perhaps it was psychological, the way belief in a curse can feed fear, and fear can accelerate collapse. Or perhaps the diamond was something more: a mirror that reflected humanity's own obsession with beauty, power, and possession, showing us that such obsessions inevitably consume their owners. Marilyn Monroe's death left the world in mourning, yet the diamond remained, untouched, unchanged. just as it had after the fall of kings. The question that lingered was not whether the moon of Baroda cursed her, but whether she was simply the latest chapter in its long, haunting story. And if Monroe was not the last, then who else might feel its shadow? After Marilyn Monroe's tragic death in 1962, the moon of Baroda seemed to vanish with her, slipping once again into the half-light of rumor and speculation. For centuries, it had been the jewel that outlived dynasties, a glittering constant in a world of impermanence. Now, it seemed to retreat back into silence, as though it too understood the weight of its legacy. Unlike other famed diamonds that found permanent homes in museums or royal collections, the moon of Baroda chose obscurity. It disappeared into the private vaults of collectors, shrouded in velvet darkness where no camera flash could reach it. There were whispers of secret auctions, of wealthy buyers who feared the jewel as much as they desired it. Some believed it had been locked away to protect others from its curse. Others argued the opposite, that its owners were unwilling to part with its beauty, regardless of the risk. And yet the diamond was not gone entirely. From time to time, it resurfaced, brief flashes in exhibitions or sales that reignited its legend. In 1944, it had already crossed the auction block at Christie, in New York. Later in the 1990s, it appeared in Japan, displayed alongside Monroe's memorabilia, as though fate was determined to keep the actress's image tethered to the stone. Each reappearance drew fascination not only for its beauty, but for the shadow that clung to it. Audiences didn't just admire the diamond, they asked the same chilling question: who would dare to wear it next? The mystery of its lost years has become part of its mythology. Did it sit quietly in a safe, its brilliance never seen, its curse lying dormant? Did it change hands through private sales, its history carefully erased by those who wished to distance themselves from its dark reputation? Or did it wait, deliberately, as if it had the patience of centuries, for the right moment to reemerge? Unlike the Hope Diamond, which found a permanent place in the Smithsonian, the moon of Baroda has never been fully tamed. It refuses to be domesticated by history, refuses to surrender its legend to a plaque on a museum wall. Its power lies in its elusiveness, in the way it slips back into shadow only to return when the world has almost forgotten it. That is the danger of such relics. They do not simply vanish. They linger, they wait, and when they return, they remind us of the lives they once touched: kings, dynasties, and Marilyn Monroe. The vanishing moon is not the story of absence, it is the story of anticipation. For if history has taught us anything, it is that the moon of Baroda never stays hidden forever. One day, it will gleam again in the public eye. The only question is, whose fate will it entwine with next? For centuries, the moon of Baroda has carried with it two faces, one dazzling, one dark, to some. It is the epitome of beauty, a 24-karat golden drop of sunlight, a symbol of wealth and timeless prestige. But to others, it is a whisper of doom, a talisman that threads tragedy through every life bold enough to claim it. Its story, suspended between admiration and fear, begs the question: is the moon of Baroda truly cursed, or have we simply woven shadows around its brilliance? The human mind is irresistibly drawn to patterns, even in the chaos of history. We look at the fall of empires and the deaths of icons and ask not how, but why. When the Maharajas of Baroda lost their thrones, when Monroe's star dimmed too soon, when the stone itself vanished from sight, it became too tempting not to see a hidden hand guiding these outcomes. Perhaps the curse is not in the diamond itself, but in what it represents: the insatiable hunger for power, beauty, and immortality. Psychologists would argue that the idea of a cursed object satisfies our deep need for narrative closure. Tragedy feels unbearable when it appears random, but attach it to a jewel, something tangible, something we can point to, and suddenly fate feels ordered. In this way, the moon of Baroda becomes more than a gem. It becomes a vessel for human fear, a mirror that reflects our darkest suspicions about the cost of desire. And yet, there is something unnerving about the diamond's history. Why does it always seem to surface in moments of turbulence, only to retreat again as though hiding from its own notoriety? Why did it find its way specifically to Marilyn Monroe, a woman already burdened by a life of unbearable scrutiny, poised on the edge of collapse? Was it chance, or was it the culmination of some unseen pattern, centuries in the making? Legends of cursed jewels have haunted human history for as long as diamonds have been mined from the earth. The Hope Diamond, the Koh-i-Noor. These names carry with them more than beauty. They carry forewarnings. And the moon of Baroda, with its golden fire and its trail of broken stories, fits seamlessly into this gallery of ominous brilliance. To dismiss the curse is easy. To explain away coincidence as history's randomness is rational. But what is rational about a stone surviving empires, dynasties, and disasters, only to emerge again and again at the center of fascination and loss? Perhaps the curse is not punishment but seduction. Perhaps it lures not to destroy, but to remind us of the fragility of power, the brevity of beauty, the inevitability of mortality. The moon of Baroda may never answer the question of whether it is legend or curse, but in truth, it doesn't need to. Its power lies in the fact that we keep asking. Each time it resurfaces, each time its yellow light pierces the dark, we are forced to confront our own relationship with destiny, desire, and the stories we choose to believe. And so the legend endures, not because of what the stone has done, but because of what we fear it might do next. In the end, what is a diamond but crystallized time, forged under the crushing weight of the earth, surviving longer than any civilization, any dynasty, any single life? The moon of Baroda is more than a gem, it is a paradox. It outlives kings and courtesans, it survives the fall of palaces and the collapse of empires, yet it rests, for the briefest moments, against fragile human skin. In those moments, it absorbs stories, laughter, secrets, and sorrow, before passing silently on, untouched by the tragedies it leaves behind. Marilyn Monroe, glittering under Hollywood's cruel lights, wore the moon of Baroda as though it had always belonged to her. The photographs endure, her smile, her effortless radiance, the golden fire at her throat. But those images are more than glamour, they are ghosts. For within a few short years, Monroe would be gone, her life ending in a storm of pills, loneliness, and unanswered questions. The diamond remained, silent, patient, eternal. This is the irony of jewels like the moon of Baroda. They are praised as symbols of immortality, yet what they truly illuminate is the brevity of human life. They do not curse, they remind. Every Maharaja who draped it across his court, every collector who locked it in a vault, every actress who wore it for a camera, all are dust now. And still, the gem glows on, carrying the weight of stories it will never tell. There is a haunting humility in that truth. We chase diamonds as though they can anchor us to eternity. We believe their sparkle grants us permanence, legacy, survival. But the opposite is true. The diamond survives to reveal our impermanence. It does not belong to us. It never has. We are only caretakers for a fleeting moment before we too are carried into history's shadows. Perhaps this is why tales of curses persist. They are a way of making sense of the uncomfortable truth that the diamond will endure long after we are forgotten. To believe in a curse is to believe the stone cares about us, that it interacts with our fate. But the harsher truth is more chilling. The diamond is indifferent. It does not curse or bless. It simply exists, untouched by love, by grief, by human desperation. And in its indifference, it forces us to face what we fear most, that our beauty, our power, our fame, even our empires are fragile illusions. The moon of Baroda, like all legendary gems, is not about the stone itself. It is about us, about the myths we weave to soften mortality, about the stories we pass down so that even if we fade, the diamond remembers. And maybe that is the curse. Not that it brings death, but that it reflects it. Every time we gaze into its golden depths, we are reminded that one day, we too will be nothing but a story clinging to its surface. So the diamond endures, quiet, eternal, waiting for its next chapter. And somewhere in its glow, the laughter of Marilyn Monroe, the whispers of Maharajas, and the sighs of forgotten empires flicker. Reminders that no matter how brightly we shine, time always wins.